students, welcome to Ask IITians. How are you all? I hope you all are good, you all are doing very well. So, my name is Arushi Sharma and I'm going to teach you a new chapter, that is the components of food, which is a part of your biology syllabus. Okay, students? So, from the name of the chapter only, that is the components of food, what do you think? What do you think about the components of food? If I'm not wrong, you must have read about the different type of source, that from where we are getting the food, exactly, like from the plants. And even though some of the animals are, we can say, carnivorous, which feed on other animals, exactly. But now we know this thing, that okay, from that sources we are getting the food. But now what type of the components are present in the food, so that when we eat food and we get energy? So can you imagine, like, what kind of the components can be present in the food so that we are getting energy from that? Exactly, student. See what happened na, like whenever we are doing some work, so after some time we start feeling hungry. Why we start feeling hungry? Because the food which we have eaten up, it's just that it has been consumed, so that the energy has been developed in our body and we are able to do that work. Exactly. But now if such condition is there, I'm just giving an example, that if for any reason, if any person doesn't get food for 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days, so what happened? So you can imagine that person is going to be ill. Exactly, because if there is no food, there is no energy, and that's how there will be no work. So that means, student, the food is having some of the component which is used up for the energy, so that we will be able to do our work. It's not only for the human beings; it is same for the plants and as well as for the animals also, so that when they are eating the food and they are also getting the energy and they are also doing their functions. Exactly, so we are going to study about all of these components in this chapter. Now what we are going to see today for this chapter is, that means the topics which we are going to cover up in today's class is, these are the topics, that first of all we are having some introduction for the components of food, that what are the nutrients, calorific value. Then we'll start discussing about the particular components, that first of all we are going to discuss about the carbohydrates, then we are going to talk about some proteins, and then we'll see some test for them also. Okay, so now let's start with the chapter. So first of all, student, like if we talk about, like, as I have already told you, that food is the important thing. Exactly, that food is a. If I ask you that, do you require food, or is it a essential thing for you? So you'll say, ma'am, what type of question you are asking us? Exactly, because food is the essential thing, or food is the necessity of each and every living being. It's not only about the human beings; it's about the animals and the plants as well. That means, student, food is essential for the survival of the living organism. It provides us energy so that we can do our activities, so that we can do our work. For example, student, whenever you are ill, I'm just giving you an example. Okay, if you are suffering with any feel like fever or something like that, so doctor always give his prescription, that eat this type of food, eat healthy food. Why? Because after eating that food, or after eating that healthy food, what will happen? Your body will gain some kind of energy, and you will able to repair up your body. So that is why, student, food is also helping us as a in the form of the energy, that we are getting the energy from it. But we can also say that it is also very useful for our growth, and as well as for the repairment of our body. Exactly, students, like we are having so different kind of things available, like we are having Complan, Bonvita, and different kind of things are there, so that we can mix up with our milk, and then they are just saying that okay, we just, that the height is going to be increased or something like that. So that's how, student, we require a healthy food, or we require food so that we can get energy to do our work, and to repair our body, or to maintain ourselves. Exactly, it's not only about the energy, or the development, it's about to maintain ourselves. Because if we are maintained, so that means we are getting the proper amount of energy, so that we can do our work, and we are having the proper repairment of our body. Therefore, understanding the importance of consuming the right kind of food becomes a necessity. That means, what type of food should we eat so that our body will remain good? For example, student, if there is any, like if we can see that some kind of disease is there, fine, so what will happen, that the doctor will give you such type of medicine, so that you will can overcome over that. Fine. So why? Because it is required for that particular disease. That is why student, to maintain your body or to maintain your body in that way, so that you will be able to do each and every kind of work, and you will not getting any kind of disease, and you are not getting ill. You are just fit and fine. So we have to choose a right kind of food for ourselves. That is why student, what happened now, if you have seen that generally what our parents suggest is that don't eat outside food, don't eat chow mein, don't eat that junk food, don't eat burgers, because they thought that like we are children, so we are used to that, but according to them it's like that it is not good for our health. Exactly. So that's how student, it is very important for us to choose a right kind of food. That is why they generally allow us to drink juice, that is just take orange juice or any other kind of juice, or milk, and then green vegetables, fruits, vegetables, chapatis, rice. So that's how student, food is very essential for the survival. And now we are going to see that what type of the components are present in the food, so that our body is getting maintained, and what type of nutrients or something, or all of these things are present, so that our body is maintained. Exactly. And first of all student, food is important for our immunity as well. Okay, that immunity which help us to keep ourselves safe from any kind of disease. What happens student, that if your immunity is good, that means you will be able to fight with any of the disease. But if your immunity is not good, so what will happen exactly, you will be like, you will be getting ill at regular basis. So that's why student, whenever if any child or any person is getting ill at a regular basis, so what does, like what doctor advise them, that you should start taking the right kind of food. Then they make a kind of diet for them, that now you have to take a juice 4 times a day or 2 times a day. I'm just giving an example. Okay, because food is having that component so that it can repair up your body. So now we are going to see that what type of components those are. Okay, now before starting that, actually there is one question, that do you know why a bodybuilder eats a lot of eggs? I have seen that thing, that if there is any bodybuilder who is just making his or her body, it's not only about boys are just towards the bodybuilding. Girls are also there, that who are very fitness freaks. So we can say that why they require so much of eggs, what that egg contain, so that they just need that they eat lots of egg. So that's a student. We are going to find out the answer of this question in this chapter only. So just have some patience, and then you will getting your answer. Okay. So first of all, student, starting with the components, we are having one term that we called as the calorific value. If I'm not wrong, student, calorific value is also be used up for the fuels. Fuels, for example, wood or coal or different type of fuels which we used in our daily life, so that we get energy from that. Exactly. So that's a student. Those fuels are used up for our transportation or for any other purpose, but the calorific value which we are going to read here, it is about the food. Because what happens student, that the food act as a fuel for our body. Now why I'm saying that that food is acting as a fuel, because after consuming the food we get energy from it, so that we can do our work. And the same thing fuel, other fuel do. Exactly, like if we are using petrol or diesel in a car, so what will happen, that car is using the energy of it, and that's how there is a transportation facility. That is how student, the same thing is also happening with the food. That if we are consuming the food, so what will happen, that we get energy from it, and that energy will be used up for our transportation. Exactly. So that's how student, that is what we are talking about, that the food is acting as a fuel for our body. Fine. Now students, what's the thing is, that if we're talking about the fuel, that the food is acting as a fuel for our body, that is why we are going to see that what's the calorific value of the food is. So students, calorific, if we talk about here, calorific value of the food indicates that the total amount of the energy that a human body is getting after after the metabolism. Okay, and which we expressed in the kilojoules per 100 gram. Or you can say that student, that the calorific value is the amount of the energy. For example, if you are consuming if you're consuming one apple, okay, I'm just taking an example is there. If you're consuming one apple, okay, and after eating that apple, obviously you are getting some amount of energy. So how we will see that what's the calorific value of that apple? That means, student, that after consumption of the 100 gram of that apple, the amount of energy which is producing from that particular 100 gram of apple, that energy is called, that total amount of energy is called as the calorific value, and that energy is used up by the human body to perform the work. Exactly, student. So now this is the calorific value. Now if you want to watch some video about the calorific value, so I'm just going to show you that video. So just wait a second. So here is a video, student, which I'm going to show you right now.
To buy some groceries. Lynn is with her mother at the supermarket to buy some groceries. There are so many choices of food that Lynn has trouble deciding what is best. So she looks at the nutrition information of the food she likes. Now she is looking at canned tuna. The can
Now students, see, like the girl is going to some supermarket and she wants to buy some good for herself. Now like she is looking at the some of the ingredients or some of the nutrition which is present in it. Have you ever noticed around yourself that if any of the eatable you are buying, even though the chips also, if a chip, like if a packet of a chips you are buying, so that is also containing some of the values written over there. So have you ever noticed all of that value, that a protein is that much is present, fat is that much, sugar is that much present. So all of these things are very important to observe. Now see how she is observing all of these things.
tuna has a calorific value of 700 kilojoules per 100 grams. Calorific value, also called energy value, is the total energy produced when 1 gram of food is completely burned. It is measured in kilojoules per gram or kilocalories per gram. We can actually estimate the calorific value of the foods we eat every day. For example, you ordered the following lunch with the respective calorific values. 1 plate of chicken rice is 2,300 kilojoules. 1 piece of egg is 300 kilojoules. 1 piece of curry puff is 150 kilojoules. 1 slice of papaya is 165 kilojoules. And 1 glass of orange juice is 205 kilojoules. The total calorific value of the foods is 3,120 kilojoules. The calorific values of food servings can also be presented in terms of every 100 grams. For example, the calorific value of an apple is 200 kilojoules per 100 gram. If you have 250 grams of apples, then its calorific value will be 200 kilojoules times 2.5 equals 500 kilojoules.
See students, like how she's calculating all of these things, that as I've told you that what's the calorific value is, that the calorific value is the total amount of energy which we are getting by the consumption of either 100 gram of that particular food or the 100 ml of that particular food. So it's just that, student, you can see that it could be also say that the kilojoule per gram or the kilocalorie per gram, these are the two units which we use to measure the value of calorific value of the particular food. So that's a student that she has taken some of the example, that if you are taking a particular meal for your lunch, and that's how and each of the things which is present in that meal, they are having their particular calorific value. Exactly. And all of these calorific value, that means you have consumed this much of calorific value in your whole day, and that is how, student, after burning all of these things, all of these calorific value, you are getting the energy so that you will be able to do your work. That is why, student, as you have seen that the apple, that for the apple she's she's telling this thing that the 200 kilojoule energy will be getting when the 100 gram of the apple is consumed. That means when it is completely consumed inside your body. So that's a, student, if you are eating 200 like 250 grams of it, so that means from that you are getting 500 kilojoule of energy. So that is called as the calorific value. That means after consumption of the 100 gram or the 1 gram of the cup food completely, so the amount of the energy from that you are getting, we call it as the calorific value. And that energy is used up for doing the activities like your if we talk about your daily life activities. Okay, so you can see here for the carbohydrates as well.
Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are the suppliers of energy. Calorific values of proteins and carbohydrates are 17 kilojoules per gram, while fats is 37 kilojoules per gram. The can of tuna that Lynn is holding contains different
So what we talking about? We are talking about the calorific value. That means student, if every food is having their own calorific value, so that is why student, when you eat apple, maybe you are getting more calorific value from more energy from that, and that is why all of the foods are having different calorific value. That is why we get different amount of energy after the consumption of food. Okay, so that is the calorific value. Now students, moving towards the another part of this chapter. Okay, now we have discussed about the calorific value. Now moving towards the carbohydrates, as we have discussed that we are going to see the different components of the food. So this is the first component. Even though in the video, if you notice that she has told you that these are that we are having three suppliers of energy. One is the carbohydrates, then proteins and fat, and the carbohydrates is one of the main source of the energy for our body. So carbohydrate is what? It is a main source of energy, so that after consumption of the carbohydrates we get the energy. That is why we calling it as the main source of energy. As you can see in this picture, all of these things are having some amount of carbohydrates in that. Now what exactly the carbohydrate is? So students, the carbohydrates, you can say that we call them as the carbs as well. And the carbohydrates are those type of components of the food which are the main source of the energy. That means whenever we consume the carbohydrate, so after the consumption of the carbohydrate, the more amount of the energy is produced, and that energy is used up for the, you can say, for doing the different activities in our whole day. So you can say, ma'am, now from where we are getting the carbohydrate? So you can see student that the main source of the carbohydrate, if I talk about, it is the starch. That is it is starch and sugars. So if we talk about starch, where the starch is present, as we can see that the starch is mainly present in potatoes. Exactly. And the sugars, that the sugar is already present in many fruits, many vegetables. So in that form we are getting the carbohydrates. So the main source of the carbohydrates is the starch and the sugar. Now students, what the thing is that we are having different carbohydrates as well. Okay, we'll discuss about this thing. But if I ask you that now why the carbohydrate is important for us, as we have seen that the supplier of the energy is what? That is the carbohydrate, proteins, and fat. Now, student, if the carbohydrate is not present in your meal, so what will happen? Your body will start consuming the proteins or the fat which are present in your body. Exactly. And if someone is not having proper amount of fat inside their body, so what will happen? They will start feeling ill because they are not getting the carbohydrate, or you can say they just start feeling low because the carbohydrate is not there, which is a main source of energy for your body. So that is why student, the consumption of the carbohydrate for our body is very important, and the source of the carbohydrates are starch and the sugars. And as we can see, starch is present in potatoes and in rice as well, and the sugars, we can say that the sugar which we consume as the carbohydrate we get from the fruits. Because what are the fruits are sweet in nature. Exactly. Maybe apple, and then it is, you can say, oranges also, banana. So all of these things are having sugars, and we that sugar we are consuming as the carbohydrates. Now we are having different type of carbohydrates as well. That is the monosaccharides, disaccharides. See, the sugar, the another word which we use for the sugar is the saccharides. Okay, that is why student, and see, and indirectly the sugars are relating with the, you can say that the sugars are what, carbohydrates, so the saccharides are also called as the carbohydrates. Now how we are classifying them, so for that I'm going to show you one video here, so just watch that video carefully. Okay, so here is the video.
This bowl of rice or this can of soda? It's a trick question. Although they may differ in fats, vitamins, and other nutritional content, when it comes to carbs, they're pretty much the same. So what exactly does that mean for your diet? First of all, carbohydrate is the nutritional category for sugars and molecules that your body breaks down to make sugars. Carbohydrates can be simple or complex, depending on their structure. This is a simple sugar, or monosaccharide. Glucose, fructose, and galactose are all simple sugars.
See students, what they're telling about the carbohydrates, so it is that carbohydrates are those type of food, when they go inside your body, so they just break down into the sugar, and that sugar you can see that we are getting in the form of the glucose. And we know this thing that the glucose is the source of the energy. Exactly, so whenever you can see that the carbohydrates can be of the very complex structure as well as the simpler structure, so on the basis of that we have divided the carbohydrates that are the present in the form of the sugar. And as I have told you that the sugar is having different word which we called as the saccharides. So first is the monosaccharides, and the monosaccharides are the simpler sugar. That means you can see their structure is very simple, that is why we are calling them as the simpler sugar. And monosaccharide means, that means they are having only one molecule, that means one structure, and that is why we are calling them as the monosaccharides. And the example of the monosaccharides, as you can see here, that it is glucose, fructose, and the galactose. Okay.
Link two of them together, and you've got a disaccharide: lactose, maltose, or sucrose.
Now, see, when you are combining these two monosaccharides together, so what you are getting, disaccharides. Di means, that means two sugar molecules, or the two sugar substance compounds has been combined together, and that is why you are getting the disaccharide from it. Okay, so monosaccharide is only one simpler substance, and when those simpler substance combine together, or we can say when two simpler substance combine together, so we call them as the disaccharides. Because students, see, when the sugar and sugar is combining together, so they are, that the combination is also having the characteristic of sugar only, that is why we are calling them as the disaccharide. So first the classification of the carbohydrate is the monosaccharides, then the second classification is the disaccharide, and disaccharide is nothing but is just that the combination of the simpler sugar. Okay, and that is why you call them as the disaccharides. And you can see the examples are lactose, maltose, and sucrose.
Gross. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, have 3 or more simple sugars strung together. Complex carbohydrates with 3 to 10 linked sugars are oligosaccharides. Those with more than 10 are polysaccharides.
So see, when the one sugar is there, so we call it as the monosaccharides. When two sugar combine, so we call them as the disaccharides, and they are called as the simple carbohydrates. But when these sugars are combining as in the form of the 3, 4, 5, 6, so we call them as the oligosaccharides. But if they are combining more than the 10, so we call them as the polysaccharides. So all these are the classification of the carbohydrates only, and on the basis of what, on the basis of the sugar. And as we have seen that the source of the carbohydrate is starch and the sugar. So starch which we found in what, we found the starch in the potatoes and in the rice as well. And the sugar, as you can see that the sugar we are getting in our fruits, in the form of the fruits, exactly, or in the vegetables also. So that is why student, the sugar is there, and if the simplest structure of the sugar is there, so we call it as the monosaccharides, that is the glucose, fructose. And what the glucose and fructose is doing, they just giving the energy to our body to do the different work. And when those sugar, when one sugar and one another sugar combine together, so we call them as the disaccharide. And when 3 to 4, 5, 6 sugar combine together, we call them as the oligosaccharides. And when more than 10 sugar molecule or the 10 sugars combine together, so we call them as the polysaccharides. Polysaccharides means many sugars combining together. So these are the classification of the carbohydrates. Okay.
During digestion, your body breaks down those complex carbohydrates into their monosaccharide building blocks. which your cells can use for energy. So when you eat any carbohydrate-rich
See, now if we are consuming any carbohydrate which is having the glucose molecule, okay, glucose are attached. Now, when the long chain is broken down during the process, during the digestion process, so that it will convert into the simpler substance exactly, and that simpler substance is what glucose. That if the long chain is made up of the glucose only, that food. If I talk about, for example, I'm taking one food and that whole food is made up of glucose, and that means the all of the that the sugar which is present, that the glucose has combined together, and when I'm eating it, so when the digestion process is going on, so what will happen, it will break down to a simpler substance. That means we are getting the glucose from that if we are getting the glucose, and now you know this thing that the glucose is the source of energy. Now your body will consume that, like it can consume that glucose in the form of the energy, and that's how our body getting energy from the carbohydrates. Okay.
Food, the sugar level in your blood, normally about a teaspoon, goes up, but your digestive tract doesn't respond to all carbohydrates the same. Consider starch and fiber, both polysaccharides, both derived from plants, both composed of hundreds to thousands of monosaccharides joined together, but they're joined together differently, and that changes the effect they have on your body. In starches, which plants mostly store for energy in roots and seeds, glucose molecules are joined together by alpha linkages.
See, students, so that's how they are just that the food which we are consuming. So it's just that the food we are consuming, and if it is having the carbohydrate in that, and that carbohydrate will break down during the digestion process. From that, we get these simpler substances, for example, glucose or any other sugar, and that sugar is used to as for in the form of the energy, and then we are able to do that work. That is why carbohydrates are called as the main source of energy. And as we have seen that the classification of the carbohydrate is just that when we are having the simpler substances which are having very simple structure, so we call them as the simpler carbohydrates, and when those are combining together, so they are getting the complex structure. So from that, what we have observed, that we are having monosaccharides and it is disaccharides. That means when two of them are combining together, so we call them as the disaccharides, and these two are the simple one, and from that simple one we are getting the complex one exactly, that is the oligosaccharides. When the 3 to 10 units, you can say that okay, what we can consider here is that okay, if it is the glucose, we can consider it as the 1 unit. Okay, and when this 1 unit is combining with the another unit of the glucose, so it will form the disaccharides. But when the 4 to 5 or 6 to 7 units are combining together, so we call them as the oligosaccharides. And when more than 10 units of the glucose combine together, so we call them as the polysaccharides. That means many saccharides units are combining, and that is why we are calling it as the polysaccharides. And you know this thing, why we are calling them as saccharides, because it is containing sugar. Okay, so it is just that polysaccharides. And the oligosaccharides and polysaccharides are what, they are complex one, because many units are combining, and that is why their structure are becoming complex in nature. That is why we are calling them as the complex carbohydrates. Okay, so I hope now you got the point about the carbohydrates. Fine. Now moving towards, so students, how you are going to test for the starch, as we know that the starch is the source, that it is a source for the carbohydrate. So how you are getting the test of the starch? So students, what you can see here, that this is a test tube. Okay, this is a test tube, and in this test tube you are having a food sample mixture. Okay, this is the food sample mixture, and in that food sample mixture, when you add the iodine solution, okay, that food will convert the color of that food into the blue color. And if that food mixture is giving the blue color after the addition of the iodine solution, then we can say that yes, that particular food is having the starch in it. For example, student, if we talk about potato, so if you are having the potato and if you are adding the drops of the iodine solution over it, so what will happen? So it will convert that potato into the blue color, and which give the result, or which give the indication that yes, it will having the amount of the starch in it. So you can see that the starch that what could be the test for the starch. So you can say that the iodine solution test can be used for the detection of the starch, and it is very simple, that you just have to drop this iodine solution over the food sample mixture, and if it is giving the blue color, dark blue color, okay, it is about the dark blue color, that means it is having the starch in it, and if it is not giving blue color, that means it is not having any starch. Okay. Now, the another topic is the proteins. As you have seen that in the very starting of this chapter, I have asked you one question, that why the bodybuilders needs to eat lots of egg, that why they are eating so much of egg. Because student, egg is having a very high amount of proteins. Now, what is the protein, students? See, proteins is a building, you can say these are the building block of our body. Okay, these are the building blocks of our body, and these proteins are made up of the amino acids, different amino acids. Now you don't have to go in very detail that what is the amino acid, what are the structure. What you have to just remember is that the protein is very important for our body. Why? Because it is the building block of our body, and it gives the amount of energy. And how? Because they are made up of the amino acids. So you can see here, student, that the protein is used up for digestion, and they are made up of the amino acid and the peptides. Okay. Now see, proteins what happened, like whenever if any person is making his body, or like doing gym or something like that, so they generally take the more amount of protein in their food. Because what happened with the help of the protein, that the energy or the strength or the strongness of the body increases. Exactly, student. That is why protein is consumed whenever any person is going to a gym or just building his body, because protein gives a very huge amount of energy, and also it is that it makes the body strong. That is why whenever any person is doing a bodybuilding, so he consumes a lots of egg, or you can say a such type of food which contains more amount of protein. Even though they take supplements which contain the amount of proteins in it. Why? Because proteins are the building blocks of our body, and it helps us to maintain our immunity as well, and they are made up of the amino acids. Fine. Now you'll say, ma'am, what are the sources of protein? So as you can see that you can see here that the dry fruits which we are having, dry fruits such as we can see here, that is the almonds, cashews. So you can see so many things are present here. So all these are the sources of protein. That means after consuming that, or the paneer, and we are having different things from which we get the more amount of protein. For example, egg is also one of them. So that is why, student, if any person is doing any building bodybuilding, so that he has to make his body strong and want to make his body, that is why they consume more amount of protein as compared to carbohydrates and the fats, because we get the energy from both of them as well. But in the case of the proteins, proteins are considered as the body building units of our body. That is why, student, the proteins are used up for the you can say for that purpose. If someone wants to make their body, like you have seen the bodybuilders, so you have seen the body of the bodybuilders, that how strong they are because of the presence of the proteins. Okay. Now if we see that what are the functions of the proteins, so the proteins provide many essential function in the body. First of all, it's just that the antibodies support immune function. That means they just increase the immunity of our body. As I have told you that if your immunity is good, that means you are able to fight with the diseases. But if your immunity is not good, so you can see that you are not able to fight those diseases. That is why protein increase the immune system, and they just support the antibodies, so that if by chance you are having any kind of disease, so that your immunity system will become stronger, and your antibodies which you are consuming, so that, or even though the antibodies which are present in our body, so they can just fight with the disease and you will get fine. Okay. Second, digestive enzyme help facilitate chemical reactions. See, due to the that protein, what happened, that the digestion will also improve, right? So that's how the digestion will improve. So that means the whole body, that your whole body is going to be very relief. See, student, if someone is having digestion problems, so maybe you have seen that they all, like they are every time they are not very relaxed because of the indigestion. But if you are consuming good amount of protein, that means your immunity system is good, and your digestion process is also good, so that's how your body is also getting fit. Fine. And you can see here that support muscle contraction and movement. As you can see here that for the proteins, what we have seen that they are the bodybuilding blocks of our body. That is why whenever if any person is want to make their muscles or something like that, so they do require protein. So for that they are having one process which we can follow, and we are going to watch that video again. Okay, fine. So what we have seen till now, student, that that the proteins are the building block of our body. So we have seen the carbohydrates, then the another component of the food is protein. And now as we have seen the test for the starch in the carbohydrates, now we are going to see the test of the proteins as well, that how we can test the protein. So for that we are having one process which we can follow, and we can test that whether that particular food is having the amount of protein in it or not. So for that I am having one video again, and we are going to watch that video. Okay, fine.
Okay, this is the fourth and final test for the food test that you guys will be doing, and today we're going to be looking at protein. As I did with the other ones, I've put protein solution inside the test tube to get our positive test result, to know if protein was present, what would actually occur. All right, the first step is you need to add 1 pipette full of sodium hydroxide. Now it's really important, because you've got to add 2 reagents in this case, that you make sure you get one of each bottle. They are labelled sodium hydroxide. The other reagent is copper sulfate. Okay, so make sure that they are in separate trays. Make sure you get one of each. When you do the protein test, it's important that you add these in the correct order. Okay, and the first step is you add 1 pipette full of the sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is a hazardous chemical, so make sure you are careful with that you as I did there, you place it inside and then squeeze. You don't want it getting onto your fingers. And with any time you're using chemicals, what would be the other safety gear you guys should wear? Goggles. Yes, goggles, good. I've added the sodium hydroxide. There is another part to it. You need to give it a bit of a shake. Okay, it's important that you agitate it between each addition of reagents. And then you add the second reagent, and this is important to add it in this order. The second reagent is copper sulfate. You guys have seen this before. It's that blue solution, but you only need about 3 or 4 drops of this. So the sodium hydroxide, 1 pipette full, mix, then 3 to 4 drops. I'll do a little bit more because I've got quite a lot of the copper sulfate, and then give it a mix. Can everyone see the colour change that's occurring? Yeah. I might add all right, what colour is it gone? Purple. Now that protein solution is quite thick, so it's not mixing evenly, but it is mixing.
So student, have you seen that what she has done? Okay, so I'll explain you once again that whenever you have to do the protein test, as we have seen in the video also, that what you have to do is that you have to take one test tube. Okay, I'll just draw it again. Okay, what you have to do is you can take one test tube. Fine, this is the test tube, and in this test tube you are taking the protein solution. What it is there, it is having the protein solution, or you can say the solution of the food which contains the protein. Okay, so it is the solution present over here. Now what are the reagents? Reagents means, student, that what type of the solution or what things you can use so that you can detect whether the food is having the protein or not. So first is the sodium hydroxide. As you have seen that for the starch test, what we required iodine solution. So for it, that first of all we required sodium hydroxide, and secondly we required copper sulfate. Okay, so it's just that student, when you are having these two, so first of all, what you have to do is you have to follow the order very well. Fine. Now, first of all, add sodium hydroxide into it. Fine. When you have add the sodium hydroxide into it, now shake it very well. When you have done the shaking of it, so now what you have to do is you have to add the copper sulfate, and you just have to add the 3 to 4 drops of it. Fine. Now, when you have added 3 to 4 drops of the copper sulfate into the solution, again mix it well. And after the mixing, if the solution is resulting into the violet color, and not exactly violet, but if into the purple or the violet color, it will show the presence, or you it will show the detection of the protein. That means your food contains the protein. And if it is not showing that color, that means your food is not having protein. Fine. So what we have seen, student, that for the test of the starch, we have used the iodine solution, and if the food mixture solution is giving the blue color after addition of the iodine solution, then we'll say that yes, that food contains the amount of starch. And for the test of the protein, it's just that you have to take the test tube, in that you have to take the sample of it. And when you add, first of all, you have to add the sodium hydroxide. You have to like more amount of it, and you have to mix it very well. After that, what you have to do is you have to add the 3 to 4 drops of the copper sulfate solution, and then again you have to mix it very well. And if after that you are getting the purple or violet color from it, so that's how you will see that yes, it contains the amount of proteins, or yes, that food contains the protein. And that's how you will come to know that that food is having protein. You'll say, mom, how many times you are going to say this word? So, and this is the test for the proteins. But as we have seen, for the starches, does that we have required what, iodine solution. But for the protein test, we require two things. One is the sodium hydroxide and the copper sulfate. And it's not like that whenever you are doing the test for the protein, you have to follow the order. That is, first of all, you have to add the sodium hydroxide solution, then you have to add the copper sulfate solution. Okay. And see, what is sodium hydroxide, what is copper sulfate, these are the chemicals only. But now, no, you don't have to go in that much deep. It's just that you should know what's the test for the protein, and for test for the starch. Okay. Okay, now we have completed all of the topics which we have to discuss in this session. Now we are having some question here. Okay, so we are going to discuss these questions. So first question asking is, what are known as the energy rich food? Energy rich food. Have you have any answer? That energy rich food? Cereals are known as the energy rich food. For example, rice, wheat, jawar, maize, all of these things. That is why, student, your parents always allow you to eat chapatis, rice, and all of these things. And always they try to ignore burger, pizza, and everything, because they are not energy rich food. And the cereals are energy rich food. That is why we always allow to consume them more and more, so that we can get good amount of energy. And for that, we can make our body good and fit, and as well as we can do many work, or you can say we can become multitasking, so that we can consume our energy at different points. Fine. Now, which of the following is a root vegetable? Now, what's the meaning of root vegetable, student? That means which the vegetable which grows from the root of the plant. So we have to see that which of the vegetable among these is the root vegetable. So potato, yes, potato grows in the underground, but it's not the root part of it. Root part, it is not a root part of the plant. Carrot is one of them. If you have like if you have seen the picture of the carrot, so it's just that here it is the plant. Okay, I'm just drawing the very rough diagram, and this is the root, and inside these root there, oh, and inside these root there is the carrot. Okay, I have drawn such a bad drawing, so just excuse me for that. You'll say, ma'am, you are, I'm just trying to make you understand for that. These are the roots now, and in this root, student, what you will find out that there are the carrots. So that's how the carrots are find out in the root of the plant. So that is why we call them as the root vegetables. So the answer for this question is carrot. And even the cucumber grows above the ground, onion also. So that's why these are not the answer. So the root vegetable is the carrot. Carrot is a root vegetable. Fine. So students, what we have discussed in this session is just that we have discussed that the food is acting as a fuel for our body, so that we are getting the amount of energy from that, and each and every kind of the food has different amount of energy which we are getting from them. And then we have discussed two components of the food, one is the carbohydrates and another one is the protein, and then we have seen the test for them as well. And that's how we have completed all of the topics of this session. And students, what else is, if after watching this video, if you are having any doubt or any question, what you can do is you can post your question over the public or the private forum of Ask IITians, and you will get your answer from the expert side. And just watch the video with the great attention. You are getting so many information from here which is going to be very helpful for you as well. And in the last, it's just that I would like to thank you to watching this video, and keep learning from Ask IITians. Thank you.